And news is coming in. The Prime Minister has landed in Philadelphia in the US. He's on a 3-day trip to the United States. Modi-Biden bilateral later tonight. That's on top of the agenda. He's there for a 3-day visit for the Quad Summit. We'll be getting in more details as my colleagues join us. Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs Editor, is with us. And also Gaurav Samant, our Managing Editor, also with us. Rohit Sharma continues to be with us from the US. For more on that, I'm going to be bringing in Gaurav to this conversation at this point in time. Gaurav, it's a 3-day visit of the Prime Minister. Now, all eyes really on the Quad, given the situation that we're seeing in various countries. But of course, the bilateral with US President Joseph Biden tonight. Give us a sense of what are the deliverables as far as India is concerned. What is it that we're looking at?
So this is a very important visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the United States of America. Do remember that this, in a way, is a farewell for President Joe Biden. This was India's turn to host the Quad Summit, and Quad 2024 was to be held in India. But at the request of the United States, and this also shows how close India and the United States are, the US requested, since it's President Biden's farewell, can this be held in the US? And India said, of course, go ahead. This also is the farewell of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida of Japan. So 2 of the 4 Quad's head of state and government would be bidding farewell to Quad in their personal capacities. And next year, when it's held in India, US will have a new president and Japan will have a new prime minister. But the bilateral one-on-one, look, India-US relationship, it's become much stronger than what it was earlier, and in new areas. And to an extent, defense, foreign affairs, strategy, coordination on Indo-Pacific, space technology, military technology. These are things which are really steering the India-US relationship. So there'll be an intense conversation on that. While Prime Minister has a one-on-one with the US President, he also has a one-on-one with all the other Quad members. So he'll be meeting Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he'll be meeting Fumio Kishida, the Japan Prime Minister separately, and of course President Joe Biden. Then, he moves for the second leg of his visit, and that again is very interesting. Apart from his interaction with the Indian diaspora, it's the summit of the future, where the Prime Minister will lay a roadmap or his vision of how the world should tackle the situation that the world is facing right now. There are 2 very major battles that are on, one in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, the other between Israel and Hamas terrorists, and Hezbollah is a new angle to that war. So how do you ensure, one, there is a movement, there's a way forward that you move towards peace? While you move to peace, the global supply chain is not adversely impacted due to these wars. And the global south, India is the voice of the global south or the developing countries. They are heard loud and clear.
Gaurav getting in those details. And Gaurav, even as I speak with you, we're staying in those pictures of the members of the diaspora. I mean, no visit of the Prime Minister outside of India abroad is complete without this huge show of support and love and respect that he gets from members of the diaspora, isn't it? And there is an event which is scheduled also, that is for tomorrow, I think, in New York, in Long Island.
You're absolutely right. A very important community event. It's the Indian American community, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has often described as the ambassadors of India in the United States of America and the human bridge between the 2 countries. And the diaspora, one, their numbers have increased, and 2, their power has increased. They're economically very powerful now. Technologically, India is very powerful, and they're very well respected, unlike many other countries whose diaspora is frowned upon or looked down upon in the United States of America. Indian diaspora is very well respected because they blend in and they help those countries grow. So when the Prime Minister addresses them and talks to them about India's achievements, they carry that story forward. They carry the India story to the United States. So the Prime Minister's interaction with the diaspora at Long Island, it's a community event, also becomes extremely important. Though it remains to be seen whether this year you'll have a number of American political leaders who will be participating, because I had covered the Madison Square Garden event of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I'd also covered Howdy Modi in Houston. And that time, a number of political leaders in the United States came and attended that diaspora event. And that showed, India's rising clout in the world order, and especially in the United States of America, Sneha.
Or also what is expected is the Prime Minister is going to be in fact taking part, at an event as far as the UN is concerned. There's going to be a meeting or there's going to be an address by the Prime Minister as well. Tell us a little more about that.
So this is Summit of the Future.
Yes.
It's a very important global event. It's a very important event of the United Nations. What would the world look like and what should the world be? Which is where India plays a very critical role. And in this Summit of the Future, the world right now is going through intense turmoil. When you look at the Russia-Ukraine war that's been on for several years now, and everybody expected that this war would perhaps hold up in a couple of weeks, if not months. It's been on for over 2 years. The war between Israel and Hamas, and now Hezbollah adding a new angle to it. That will practically be in the next couple of days. It will be 1 year of that terrible attack on Israel. And its impact. So how is this war impacting? If the global supply chain is being impacted, food supplies are being impacted, fuel supplies are being impacted, prices are going up. And while Europe would want the whole world to, be with them or be with the NATO countries, India has that very strong voice, like we saw during the G20 summit in India, where India emerged as the voice of the developing world. And India was repeatedly trying to tell the world, that war is your war. That's not our war. And why should we be adversely impacted by that war? Look at the prices of fuel that's going up. Europe is suffering. The world is suffering. But why should the developing countries suffer?
That's right. I'll just come back to you, Gaurav, in a moment from now. Please be with us. You rightly pointed out that going to be, in fact, the theme really is multilateral solutions for a better tomorrow as far as the Summit of the Future is concerned. But before that, this ground report that my colleague Rohit has in fact sent us. Let's take a look at his interaction with members of the diaspora there.
So let's try to walk around, or let's try to see if, hi ma'am, you are waiting for the Prime Minister's visit. What are you like? Why are you so excited about him coming to town?
It's his first time here in Delaware, so we're just super excited. Everyone, as you can see, we're all have big smiles on our faces. We're just looking forward to meeting him here.
Are you local? Are you from Delaware?
Yes, we are from here, Gujarat, and here Delaware.
अच्छा, आप गुजरात से हैं?
Yeah, गुजरात से है.
गुजरात में कहाँ से आप?
बड़ौदा से.
प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की इस visit में, what are your thoughts? Why are you excited about him this time around?
Because he done lot of for our India, so that was our dream, and I don't know after we see him it's gonna be dream again.
आप में से कितने लोग संडे को उनके इवेंट में जा रहे हैं? मैंने सुना टिकट नहीं मिल पा रही है लोगों को.
यहाँ पे ही काम करा है, इवेंट में नहीं काम करा है.
कोई परफॉर्मेंस है प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के लिए, कुछ आप लोग करने वाले हैं?
रिप्रेजेंटिंग अवर गुजरात.
You're representing गुजरात, और आप लोकली डेलावेयर यहाँ पे रहते हैं.
न्यू जर्सी से आए.
आप जर्सी से यहाँ पे आए हैं. आप जा रहे हैं प्रोग्राम में प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के संडे को? आप भी नहीं जा पा रहे. So the tickets are expensive. Thank you. The tickets are obviously very hardly sought after. और ये जो tickets हैं वो लोगों को मिल नहीं पा रही है. And we'll try to talk to some of the people. I think I spot somebody I know from Maryland here. Bijal, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Okay, we'll just in fact play the report out again of Rohit, and these are pictures right now of the Prime Minister, who's just in fact landed in Philadelphia a while ago. Just some time from now, there is going to be a bilateral with US President Joe Biden. He is now, in fact, in Philadelphia in the US, where he's getting a warm welcome. In just some time from now, he is going to be welcomed by President Joe Biden. These are pictures, in fact, of the Prime Minister who has reached Philadelphia a few moments ago. Meeting with Quad leaders also on the agenda. Gaurav continues to be with us. Gaurav, we have pictures playing out of the Prime Minister getting a warm welcome as he arrives in Philadelphia.
There is tremendous enthusiasm amongst the Indian diaspora wherever Prime Minister Narendra Modi travels, because they feel India's stature is rising. We are now the fifth largest economy in the world. We aspire to be the third largest economy. And even before, we've become the third largest economy, the Prime Minister already is talking about India being the top two economies of the world in future. So this is how India is constantly working to rise in every sphere. Recently, the Prime Minister had traveled to Ukraine. Before that, in July, he traveled to Russia. And there will be a conversation between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Joe Biden on the progress that could be made in an effort to find peace in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Remember that conversation that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had with the Russian President Vladimir Putin? It lasted several hours, between 4 to 5 hours, went on till very late at night. And except the two heads of state and government, only the interpreters were there. So they discussed some ideas. Then Prime Minister Narendra Modi traveled to Ukraine. And from Poland, he traveled by train almost 8 to 10 hours to meet President Zelensky. He was very warmly received in Ukraine. And there they discussed some more ideas. What are those ideas? What's the way forward? National Security Advisor Ajit Doval carried some message back to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and now all of that, perhaps in some form or the other, would be discussed with the US President Joe Biden in an effort to see whether there is a way forward. Because India's stance, Sneha, has been very clear. One, for peace, both parties have to be on the same table. Both parties have to agree to that formula, and fighting must stop. There has to be a ceasefire. It cannot be a one-sided affair. It cannot be one wins, the other loses. It has to be, give and take on both sides. What's that give and take? Perhaps is the conversation they will be having in the days ahead, and that conversation will be extremely crucial. But that's only one part of the conversation. Since India and the United States of America are very strong, they have a comprehensive strategic partnership. There'll be conversation and a lot of focus on the Indo-Pacific. There'll be a conversation on China. There'll be a conversation on open, sea lanes of communication, peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. While this is seen more as a humanitarian aid and economy and healthcare, cancer research is something, moonshot is something that India is very excited about. How in the Indo-Pacific the world should contribute to fight cancer. Cervical cancer is something that these countries are focusing increasingly on. So it's a very wide range of issues that the two countries will be talking about, and then in Quad, the four countries will be talking about, Sneha.
Undoubtedly, it's an opportunity, Geeta, isn't it, for all of these countries to really build on their relationship and reflect back as to what was achieved in the year gone by and what is it that they can achieve in the days and weeks to come, essentially.
Well, absolutely. This is going to be one of the most important legacy items for President Biden. The fact that the summit level meeting happened under his presidency, is in itself a very important achievement. So that's certainly something that they're going to drive home, and they are driving home. And yes, they are looking at not just the leadership of these four countries in driving the Indo-Pacific agenda, but also an expansion of the Indo-Pacific when it comes to maritime security and how they can include other countries in this Indo-Pacific collaboration bloc. Whether that means expansion of the Quad is something we'll have to wait and see. There are many countries that are interested in being a part of a Quad Plus. So again, a legacy issue for Biden, and therefore they are looking at making the most of this last Quad summit under Biden presidency. And they are looking at a very important outcome document that will be put out after the leadership meets, after the summit level meeting. And Sneha, that in itself is going to be significant, but it's the bilateral meetings that will take place on the sidelines that will also have a lot of critical and crucial issues, whether it's Prime Minister Modi's meeting with the Japanese Premier, with the Australian Prime Minister, or with President Biden.
Well, absolutely. Be with us, Geeta. I'm going to go back to Rohit for more on that. Rohit, first of all, what time is it there and how does the day really look like? Just break that down for us. Because, these 3 days are going to be very keenly watched. Significant given the global events around us, and also from the point of view of the importance and the significance of the Quad Summit, the 6th one that the Prime Minister is once again being a part of.
Well, right now it's 10:45 a.m. The Prime Minister is expected to be at the hotel that you see behind me, possibly He's going to be here around 11ish. After that, he's going to be going into a room where, we were showing our viewers. There's a long queue of people trying to meet the Prime Minister. So he's going to be greeting the people who've been here since this morning. He'll talk to them, and then we all go together with the Prime Minister for his first bilateral meeting with the President Biden. That's the first event today. So he's going to be going to President Biden's whole house. They will be doing the bilateral meeting over there, after which there will be a joint statement that we'll see will come out. After that, he has a packed day. He's going to have meetings with Quad leaders. There's a Cancer Moonshot event that Gaurav was speaking about. There's going to be a Quad reception, and then he leaves for New York at around 10 p.m. So it's going to be a very jam-packed day. There will be a lot of photo ops, obviously, with the leaders. This is Japanese Prime Minister's, last visit also, in terms of, because he's going to be also going away like Joe Biden. So essentially, a lot of farewells, a lot of thank yous would be said at these meetings. Joe Biden's extended the invite to all the Quad leaders and to his home. He's invited them here because the Quad, we know.
Be with us, Rohit. Even as you are, in fact, getting us those details, the US President has just, in fact, put out a tweet welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He says on X, and I'm going to read that out, President Biden, today I'll welcome the Prime Ministers Albanese, Modi and Kishida to my home, Delaware. These leaders aren't just essential to ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. They're friends of mine and friends of our nation. I look forward to all we'll accomplish in this summit ahead, is what US President Joseph Biden has said. Rohit, essentially they're setting the tone that these aren't just, people that we do business with. These aren't just heads of countries that we interact with to get things done. They're also friends of mine. Speaking volumes of also the fact, and interesting, I would say, that this is a Prime Minister who shares a great relationship with Joe Biden, as he does with former President Donald Trump, doesn't he?
He does. And look, President Joe Biden has publicly said.
Yes, Rohit, once again, be with us. We're rolling coverage, and these are pictures of the Prime Minister. Like Rohit told us, meeting with members of the Indian diaspora, been patiently waiting for the Prime Minister, shaking hands with members of the diaspora here who are in Delaware and were waiting keenly to interact with the Prime Minister. Take a look at those pictures coming in. I'm going to, in fact, go back to Gaurav for more on that as well. As expected, warm interaction of the Prime Minister with members, Gaurav, of the diaspora there.
Oh, the diaspora, as Rohit was very rightly telling us, they're so excited about Prime Minister Narendra Modi coming to the United States or whatever country he goes to. I've covered his visits to Ukraine. I've covered his visits to Russia, to the United Kingdom, to France, and wherever he goes, the diaspora are there in numbers to greet him. They say that in the eyes of their friends and neighbors and where they work, in the world at large, India's stature is growing. India's stature as a world power, especially now when India is making that effort that the entire world is seeing. Can India do something to bring peace between Russia and Ukraine? It's a long shot. India is not a European country. India is perhaps the only country in the world with direct access both to President Putin and President Zelensky, respected by both and trusted by both sides. So, but the only country in the world, that's not China, that's not Brazil, though. President Putin has talked about China being Russia's friend. He's talked about Brazil being Russia's friend. But would President Zelensky say the same? President Zelensky calls India a friend, even though he was very upset when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Moscow, and then there was an attack on that hospital, which I reported from subsequently in Ukraine. The fact remains, India and Indian diaspora, because you have a large number of Indians in Russia, you have a large number of Indians in Ukraine. They speak the language, they live in that country, they've done a lot for those countries. So that just goes on to show the diaspora is that human bridge between India and those countries. And that is why they get really excited when Prime Minister goes there and interacts with them.
Well, absolutely. Gaurav, you rightly pointed out that this is a unique case, for a country like Ukraine and Russia to both, in fact, trust Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the world really looking at the role that India, under the leadership of the Prime Minister and his personal equations with both of these leaders, can play in then ensuring truce. When is there going to be truce? I'm being told that Ambassador Rajiv Dogra is also in fact joining us this evening. Ambassador Dogra, thank you for your time. I want to begin by asking you, how do you look at this visit from the point of view of deliverables for India? As far as first, of course, the Quad later, but the bilateral today with President Joe Biden is concerned.
Well, I'm glad you used the word deliverables, especially with regard to the meeting with Biden, because there's a lot that India has to be concerned about recent actions in America. For example, the Panun case. That's not what friends should be doing. And obviously, there's a role of establishment in it. So I guess in the bilaterals, this will figure. Second, I mean, there are other issues also, but let me just flag this particular one, because it is of major concern. The second, as far as Quad is concerned, please remember, in every previous meeting, China has been the dragon in the room. And for India, it is going to be a very delicate balancing act, because it would not want to upset China beyond a point or unnecessarily. And here, President Biden's readout, the message he's put out before the Quad meeting, clearly mentions Indo-Pacific. And that's a hint towards China. So naturally, it will require a lot of careful messaging out of the Quad meeting on India's part, so that unnecessary signals do not go out to a country which is our closest neighbor and with which we have at best a fractious relationship. Coming to the meeting or the address by the Prime Minister to the Indian community, I think that is certainly a positive, and that is unambiguously, unadulterated, warm occasion for the community and also for the Prime Minister to be among Indian people who are doing so well, not just in America, but worldwide, but in America especially. As far as the summit of the future is concerned, in fact, that may not live up to the expectations that it should normally do, because the world is fractured today. The world is divided into groups, one led by China and Russia, the other by America and its allies. The world is at war in many places. Israel, Hamas, expanded to Lebanon, the Russia-Ukraine war. And the third part, world is also at an economic crisis, because all is not well with the world. All is not well with its supply side assurances. All is not well with its financial architecture in the coming days and coming months and years, because there are worrying signs there. So you can only be generous with the global south if the developed world, which has the money to spare, can be generous with it. So at best, I expect there would be polite noises about climate change, about agriculture, stability, food security, and health. But in concrete terms, I do not think there would be much progress, because there's not money to spare.
Okay. All right. Be with us, Rajiv Dogra. I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now. Geeta, if you heard Ambassador Dogra, would you agree that there are sticky issues, there are sticky points that could just be coming up in this meeting? And if yes, apart from Panun, what else? What are the other issues that need to be ironed out between these two countries?
Well, as of now, I couldn't clearly hear what Ambassador Dogra had said, Sneha, but as of now, when it comes to the sticky and the niggling areas, of course, there are many issues that need to be ironed out that have to do with trade. But this is not a presidency where you can talk about conversations and how to take it forward, because this almost is a lame duck presidency for President Biden. So the Indian side is going to discuss things that have already been discussed, a review of the important decisions that have already been taken and how to take them forward. Like Gaurav was saying, there's a lot of conversation on defense and technology transfer and cooperation. There is going to be conversation on that front. But when it comes to the sticklers over here, it is the murder for hire charges case, wherein we've heard the White House during the press conference, State Department during its press conference talk about how they are looking at accountability, that the high-level committee that was formed here in India to inquire about what really happened, what really transpired, is something that they would be seeking a response on. And this also comes at a very critical juncture. It comes at a time when a U.S. court has summoned none other than the National Security Advisor, or the letter to the Indian administration had gone for National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, former chief, who was the chief of the Research and Analysis Wing not so long ago, Samant Goel, the two players who, according to their own reports and the very, very detailed chat that has now been made public, so they are also part of that entire summons. So this meeting comes at a time when there are summons from a court, and there is enough pressure on Washington, D.C., that's the Biden administration, on ensuring that there is some response from India. So that certainly is going to be a very important area during the bilateral conversations. In all probability, this also would be a likely topic that could come up between the two sides. India has made it very clear that, one, India does not carry out operations on foreign soil, the manner in which India has been accused of. And secondly, the summons itself, when it comes to the summons, India has put out a very strong official position, which is by the Foreign Secretary of India, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, during his press briefing for the Prime Minister's visit, where he said that this entire summon and the entire case itself is unwarranted and unsubstantiated. So that's the position India holds, and India will continue to maintain that. But yes, there is a high-level committee that was formed to look into this entire case and the matter. And that's something that could come up during discussions as to where has the inquiry really led to, and where does it stand at this point in time.
That's right. I'm going to, in fact, also put that question to Gaurav. And what does he think would be the outcomes of the bilateral as far as this stock-taking exercise, Gaurav, is concerned? Like Geeta was telling us that is bound to happen, obviously. But what next? You know, taking this relationship at another level, given that they've chosen to have a bilateral at the sidelines of the Quad Summit. What do you think is really going to be on top of the agenda as far as the bilaterals are concerned?
So it's a process that's constantly on, and India engages with all sides. Do keep one thing in mind, that India has bipartisan support in the United States of America, because both, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they understand India's importance, from their pivot to Asia to pivot to India to Asia Pacific becoming Indo-Pacific. The United States realizes that India is an extremely important country in the world, and not just in the region. And India is playing a much, much bigger role. Though there are elements in the State Department, or there are departments in the United States of America, Ambassador Dogra and Geeta Mohan and Rohit can tell us more about it, who want to keep India's growth and rise under check, which India refuses, to let these niggles impact the relationship. After all, who is Pannu? Pannu is a terrorist. Pannu is a banned entity in India. And if America is truly a friend of India, and it's such a comprehensive strategic partnership, so America also has to keep Indian interests in mind, that they should not be shielding a terrorist or a terror supporter or a banned terrorist organization supporter and somebody who encourages secession. Canada did that with Niger, and you've seen what's happening in Canada right now. In this 21st century world, this narrative building that the US State Department or elements in the State Department try to do, it doesn't really work. and niggles like these, or just before an important visit, Pannu going to court in New York, and why only New York and why New York each time? These are issues, when you go into the details, you figure out there are certain elements who want to finger you as a nation. It does not work in the long run because India is very clear that we're also a strong country. We are not in an American camp. And do keep another thing in mind, Sneha. India is a part of Quad. India is a part of BRICS. India is also a part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The only country that's a very powerful member of so many groupings in the world, which may be at loggerheads, but India plays a very crucial role in all these groupings. In BRICS, India is strong. In SCO, India is very strong. India and Russia together, and also in Quad. And well, many say this multi-alignment or sailing in multiple boats do not work. So far, Indian diplomats, and Ambassador Dogra can tell us much better, Indian diplomats have been able to walk this very fine line and very effectively. You know that from the issue of oil, when there was so much restriction on India, don't buy oil from Russia, India went ahead and bought that oil, and it benefited not just India, it benefited the developing world. And a lot of that oil is being procured by the same European countries that were finger pointing. So that finger pointing doesn't work in 21st century world, and that's the point India is very effectively sending across.
Okay. I'm just going to come back to you, Gaurav, in a moment from now. Also, I just would want to bring in Rohit in just a few moments. If Rohit is with us, we'll also try to get a ground report on what's really happening at this point in time. But Ashok Sajanar, former diplomat, also again joining us. Thank you so much for your time. Ashok Sajanar, I would like to ask you, first of all, your views as far as the significance of this meeting, this 3-day visit to the US is concerned. Of course, there are events that we're looking at, including the bilateral, which is in the sidelines of the Quad Summit. But the big headline that you would really expect from the Quad Summit, and also that one big headline that you would expect really from the bilateral with the US President.
Thank you very much, Sneha. I think the bilateral is very important. It's going to, I think, happen anytime now because the Prime Minister has landed there. I think basically this will be a strong message going forward that irrespective of any change that might happen as far as the White House is concerned, India-US relations are very strong and they will continue to grow and continue to deepen further with the passage of time. And today, whether it is in the area of defense or it is in the area of critical and emerging technologies, both the countries are partners in terms of what is beneficial for the two countries, for the two people, but the partnership is of benefit to the whole world. And I think as far as the Quad Summit is concerned, Sneha, again, that Quad is a force for global good. Its agenda has grown several times since the first Quad Summit took place in September. In-person Quad Summit took place in September of 2021 when there were just 3 issues, that is critical emerging technologies, that is vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines, and climate change. Today, it is, the whole issues of whether it is education or it is healthcare or it is infrastructure or it is connectivity or it is humanitarian assistance. All these issues are a part of the Quad. And basically, the message going out strongly that the acceptance of Quad amongst the Indo-Pacific countries is growing, and Quad is providing benefits and tangible concrete goods to the people of the Indo-Pacific. So I think both of them very important meetings that take place today, and it will chart out the course for the future, both in bilateral relations as well as the Quad platform is concerned. Sneha.
Ambassador Sajanhar, if I could quickly come in just for 2 seconds. Ambassador Dogra, Sneha, Geeta and I were having this conversation about if India and America are such good friends, and it's such a good comprehensive strategic partnership, and it's a partnership for global good. Why would America do things like a Pannu case or a case in a New York court? And why just a New York court just before, national security, and a case against National Security Advisor Ajit Doval or former Raw Chief Samant Goel? Why would America do things like this if we're supposed to be such great friends?
Gaurav, in my view, let us not conflate with, this Pannu case with America per se. I think as far as there are different elements in all governments, and as far as the deep state in the United States is concerned, we are all aware that it has, it takes its own directions in the manner in which it goes. So, and we know what the the perceptions, whether it is the Pentagon or it is the State Department, and all of them have, you have been dealing with it for a long time. I have been posted in Washington, D.C., and I have seen this at first hand. So whatever these issues are happening, don't conflate them with that this is the position of America, this is the view of America. Not at all. I think as far as America is concerned, look at what President Biden says, look at what Mr. Blinken says, look at also what Jake Sullivan says. You see, this whole Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, that is a side show. Let's not make it a central show. It is just a mere blip on this thing. No one takes notice. You see, if it was such a big thing, you remember that when Mr. Biden came for the G20 summit, it was just mentioned to the Prime Minister in passing. No one even mentioned about it because, so to say, they didn't want to spoil India's party by sort of, raking up issues like this. But then it is moving on a parallel. As far as the court case is concerned, you also know that as far as these courts are concerned, in any democracy, whether it's in India or in the United States, courts have a certain procedure of their own, and they will follow that process. And it is following that process. So let us not, my request to you, Gaurav, and to your channel is, let's not spend time on people like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, and fine. I'm sure these
except to expose them, except to expose how there are elements in the U.S. State Department or the U.S. Deep State who are supporting secessionist forces in India even today. They were doing that in the past, but they continue to do that even today, Sneha, and that remains a cause for concern.
All right, but is that going to be a sticky point, and is that something that's going to be coming up in the discussions or not? Is something that really remains to be seen. I'm just going to come back to you, Gaurav, in a moment from now, and also to Ambassador Ashok Sajanar and Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Also, Geeta continues to be with us. Rohit is with us, getting us up to speed with what's happening on the ground. Rohit, where exactly are you right now? We just, in fact, played out that report with the members of the diaspora who are, in fact, just waiting to get a glimpse of the Prime Minister. He's had an interaction with some of them waiting outside the hotel.
Yeah, so the Prime Minister is going to be in the hotel where I'm stationed right now. Sneha, there is a room set up where he's going to be meeting with more diaspora members here in Wilmington. What the pictures we've seen is, he was welcomed at the airport. Now he's going to be meeting with some of the folks who've been lined up since like 7 a.m. This morning just to get a glimpse of Prime Minister and meet up with him. After that, we will be leaving for Mr. President Biden's home. We are part of the traveling pool, so I would be shadowing the Prime Minister the entire day. Today we'll be traveling to President Biden's home. We would be there when the bilateral meeting happens, post which he will head to the Quad meeting. So a lot will happen as soon as the Prime Minister arrives at this hotel, and we'll probably getting a lot of releases, a lot of deliverables. There will be a lot to talk about. But for right now, everybody at the hotel is just waiting for the Prime Minister to arrive so they can interact with him, and then Prime Minister will be on his way, attending important meetings that are slated for him from 1 p.m. until 7 or 8 p.m. tonight.
All right. Be with us. I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now. Geeta also, of course, continues to be with us as we get in more details on what really is expected. Geeta, what about the Quad Summit? Just tell us, how is that planned? And also, what really is expected as far as the discussions here are concerned?
Well, a few very important things. Now, the Quad Summit is going to take place in some time from now. Prime Minister Modi will be arriving at his hotel. And like Rohit said, that they'll be going to the venue. For leaders, it's going to be a very important restricted and then delegation. All of that takes place as per protocol and process, where conversations are held on few very important points. The security architecture of the Indo-Pacific. Quad basically, Sneha, focuses on the Indo-Pacific and all the countries that are involved there to ensure freedom of navigation. And when you say freedom of navigation, again, what the Quad leadership tries to say is that it's not an anti-China bloc. If China wants to be part of it, it'll be good to show respect when it comes to navigating the waters, especially the South China Sea. Having said that, there's one important aspect when it comes to trade, and that was highlighted during COVID, that the supply chain disruption is a major concern. Also, a resilient supply chain, again, is another very important aspect of the Quad conversations. The defense and military architecture in terms of only cooperation on how the two sides are looking at how the four sides are looking at cooperating on that front. But it's the technology and digital aspect that is again a very big agenda item on for the Quad. Artificial intelligence, again, another very important aspect when it comes to conversations amongst the Quad cohort. There is going to be a fellowship that they're going to announce, the Quad fellowship. And the United States of America has already announced a bipartisan Quad caucus. Now, in the US, there are caucuses for various groups, various regions, countries. There is an India caucus. There's also a Pakistan caucus. There is a Samosa caucus. So there are various caucuses in the United States of America that includes senators and congressmen from both sides, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Yes. The announcement was made yesterday to have a Quad caucus, which will include bipartisan, which will have bipartisan participation from the Republican Party, as also from the Democratic Party, senators and congressmen and congresspersons alike. Yes. And that certainly is going to work on how to further Quad's interests. They're also talking about expansion of the Indo-Pacific when it comes to Quad. Whether it's a Quad plus or having a lot of other countries participating in Quad conversations is something we'll have to wait and see. The bigger idea over here, if you zoom out a little, Sneha, is how President Biden, in his last few months in office and his last and only term, is going to leave the legacy of a Quad leadership behind. So there are going to be key takeaways, big takeaways, but in terms of continuity, in terms of looking at how they're going to take it forward in the future. Yes. The bilateral conversations are going to be very significant, like Ambassador Dogra and Gaurav Sawant said. That's where the critical security and strategic aspects of the conversations will come out, whether it's with Biden, with Albanese or Kishida.
Absolutely. You know, also, Ambassador Sajjana, I want to ask you, and this comes at a time when the US, when in fact Prime Minister Narendra Modi has in fact been in Ukraine, is met with the leadership. President Zelensky also has had engagements with the Russian president. You know, the world, the West also significantly looking at how India, because of the Prime Minister's proactiveness, has positioned India as a potential mediator. And this is something that really stands out. We're expecting the Prime Minister also, in fact, to have discussions with the US President in the bilateral today on what could be possibly the road ahead, because India is the only country who's talking really to both sides, isn't it?
No, absolutely, Sneha. I think you're very right. I think India is possibly the only or one of the very few countries which has access to both, whether it's the United States and the West, Ukraine on one side and Russia on the other. So I think definitely as far as the bilateral meeting is concerned, as also in the Quad, because you would have seen that the leaders' declaration last time, which issued from Hiroshima in May of 2023, it mentions about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Also, the foreign ministers' meeting, which took place in Tokyo in July of this year, that also has a very detailed paragraph on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So I think Prime Minister Modi is definitely going to brief all the other leaders about his discussions, both with President Putin, also with President Zelensky. And I think there's going to be some discussion, although I would be very surprised if there is any significant forward movement that could take place, because I think the positions of the two sides are so far apart. We've also seen that after Prime Minister Modi's visit, briefing to Putin was done not only by Prime Minister Modi himself on telephone, but also by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval when he was in St. Petersburg for the BRICS NSA meeting. So I think he has the latest information in terms of thinking of both sides, Ukraine and Russia, and a good detailed discussion will take place on the possibilities of the roadmap for the future. But again, I would say that I don't foresee any progress as of now, and I think that much was said by the Foreign Secretary Misri, Vikram Misri, also by the External Affairs Minister himself, that so far we are taking messages from one side to the other. And we'll really have to wait and see as to how much the two sides are willing to compromise. That really depends upon them. It doesn't depend upon us. But at the moment, what we see is that the positions are maximalist on both sides, and the positions are far apart, because Mr. Putin would like to keep the whole of Donbass, all the 4 provinces, and Crimea to himself. And Mr. Zelensky, he wants that total territorial integrity and sovereignty, including Crimea, should be restored back to Ukraine.
I'll just come back once again to you. We'll just get in a quick word from Ground Zero, where my colleague Shweta Singh is also joining us with the very latest. Shweta, give us a sense of what's going on, because we are, putting out those pictures of members of the diaspora interacting with the Prime Minister just as he landed. But exactly are you? Tell us more.
Sneha, I've just landed in New York. My colleague Rohit is in Delaware. But even here in New York, where the event for Prime Ministers, the Indian diaspora event, which has almost become a tradition here ever since PM Modi has taken over. Think about the Madison Square and how suddenly he took all the world by a storm, that all the Indians, wherever he used to go, used to assemble, and there were chants of Modi, Modi. Now there is a small part of that which you saw when he reached Delaware, and there were Indians who had assembled there. And Indians in New York are also pretty excited that the Prime Minister will be here soon. And specifically when at the UNGA he will be addressing the Summit of the Future, I think that is when the entire world would also want to sit up and take notice what Prime Minister Modi has to say, especially because he's one of the few leaders who went to Ukraine and Russia both, and spoke to Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, and perhaps he's being looked at that perhaps he can get peace to that part of the world where there has been no peace for more than 2 years now. So people here want to know if actually the peace that they've been waiting for can be brokered by the Prime Minister of India, who has equally good relations with both the countries. You've heard what President Biden had to say here. His team has been specifically telling us that he will be speaking to PM Modi on the sidelines of the Quad about what happened in Ukraine, what can be done for Ukraine-Russia peace, and apart from the other issues that the Quad has to address, Sneha.
That's right. Shweta, be with us. I'm just going to put that question to Geeta as well. Geeta, as far as the issue of brokering peace here is concerned, I think the signals from India are as follows, that this is an ongoing process and this isn't going to be easy. But India is going to, in fact, make that effort. I think that is the kind of signaling that has come from India, isn't it? Because, like Shweta was telling us also, this has been a war which has been ongoing for almost 2 years or more. And it's a huge concern that both sides are not relenting.
Well, again, a very important question, Sneha, when it comes to can India play peace broker. Now, at this point in time, at this juncture, look at the position that Russia and Ukraine have taken. Russia is quite clear that there is going to be no moving back from at least territories that have now, in a referendum that Russia carried out, have become part of Russia, which is the entire Donbas region that was under Russian control and Crimea. And if that is the case, then that is an unacceptable future for Ukraine. Ukraine does want a pushback of the troops from the Zaporizhia area, Kherson, so on and so forth. But they also want the Russian troops to withdraw from Donbas and Crimea. That is not going to happen. So there is stalemate over there. Another very important issue is that there was one peace summit that took place and Russia was not there in the room. The second peace summit, they're saying they might have Russia in the room, but the positions that both sides have taken are non-negotiable. So what's India really doing in this scenario? India is playing messenger. You need to invest a lot of capital. The capital has to be economic. The capital has to be political. Is India willing to invest the kind of political and economic capital is the question at this point in time to play peace broker. And that really costs a lot. With the position that India holds, and if you really want to play peace broker, then you'd be in a very uncomfortable position because neither side is budging. So in terms of messaging itself, which is also a very, very important aspect, the fact that they're not willing to sit in a room, the fact that they're not willing to talk, there are no engagements, there's no conversation, they're at war, Sneha, is the reason why this playing messenger also becomes a very important aspect, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting Putin and then also meeting Zelensky becomes a very important part of the conversation that will take place during the Quad meeting, which also will be discussing all the conflicts in the region, whether it's Israel, Hamas,
that's right,
for that matter.
Geeta, we'll continue our conversations about that because the conflicts in the region obviously will be on top of the agenda. It's a time when there is a war, and of course there are tensions between countries. These are issues on the table to be discussed at the Quad Summit, and of course at the bilateral as well. We'll be getting our viewers up to speed with all the developments with my colleagues tracking that big story. Shweta Singh, Rohit Sharma from Ground Zero, Geeta Mohan with a perspective here, Gaurav Sawant with his perspective here. All the voices right here, the perspectives on India Today.